Hey, everybody, this is Perch. I I don't know where to begin. Um, you know, Several years ago is actually the first year of this channel, second year of this channel. I don't know. I did a video giving the history behind the milkshake crew. Now, the milkshake crew, if you don't remember it, and good for you if you don't. Heather Ontos and some of the full time staffers at Marvel, the female editors. By the way, when are we done with the whole women and female? Like, there's a period of time where people are trying to say that if you use the word female, you're an incel because female is a red flag. If you say female instead of woman, I mean, look, it means the same thing. I'm sorry. I police the words all you want, but look, my intention is I'm married to a woman. I'm married to a female. I respect her to the ends of the earth, and she's the mother of my children. And you know, I've Mrs. Perch is amazing, and Mrs. Perch and Mrs. West got along very well. By the way, but anyway, that I every now and then I say female, and then I'm like, somewhere in the back of my head, somebody's like, somebody's going to call you an incel for saying that. I'm like, and then the other part of my head's like, shut the fuck up, little part of my head. You can say whatever you want. Anyway, sorry, we got on a tangent. Anyway, a bunch of women at Marvel, staffers, not contractors, and I don't know why that detail is important, but for some reason I think it is. I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, they decided to go get milkshakes to honor Flo. Flo was a Marvel legend. I think that's appropriate. We can call her that. Flo worked at Marvel for a very long time, doing 1,000,001 jobs, and she was a staple at Marvel. She was, if you did any business with Marvel, if you went to the office, if you had to engage with that company, you did anything with Marvel Comics, Flo was a a kind of a core part of that company, and Flo died. And so a bunch of women at Marvel, females at Marvel, went out and got milkshakes because Flo liked milkshakes. Now, it's kind of weird a little bit. I think Marvel, the bullpen bulletins and some of the hype around Flo was like, you would, if you took those to the letter, you would think that Flo was like addicted like crack to milkshakes, but that isn't the case from people I've talked to. But anyway, so they went out and got milkshakes, and they took a selfie of them drinking milkshakes, and Heather Ontos, I think, posted it, and then some people basically went in there and said, and I'm paraphrasing, hey, you stupid bitches, why don't you get to work actually making comics and stop drinking milkshakes? Fuck. That's more or less what they said. Handful of people said, oh my God, I would like to, you could suck on something other than that straw, if you know what I mean. And then some other people said, hey, you're all fat, stop drinking milkshakes. They kind of the gamut of, why don't you come, people went all in on a bunch of different areas. Now, that's not good that people did that. But in fairness, you posted that on Twitter. And so what did you think was going to happen? Because Twitter is the place you post things for people to shit on you. If you posted a picture of a flower, just a wonderful, nice photo of a flower growing in grass, peeking up at the sun, looking beautiful, somebody is going to reply to that going, fuck Israel. That's just how it's going to go. That's, I, by the way, if I'm going to, get something off my chest here, I like making jokes about a lot of this stuff because to me, humor is the only logical path forward in all of this. Humor. And so every now and then I will make jokes. And I remember making a joke with an interview with Sean Murphy where you'd said something and I made a joke about like, well, how do you feel about Palestine? And it was a joke. obviously there's some very serious things going on there with Israel and Palestine and the conflict and everything else. But the idea is to kind of say, look, aren't we all way too serious about all this stuff? And some people took offense to that, gave him and me, but mostly him, a lot of shit over that one innocuous comment. Fine, um, it is what it is. But if you post something on Twitter, people are going to get silly about it. And this one little post generated a bunch of people saying, "Hey, you stupid bitches, get back to making comics." Which, look, if Scott Snyder and a bunch of dudes posted a picture of them at a baseball game eating hot dogs, somebody is going to respond to that photo going, "Oh, so you eat dick." Somebody is going to do that. That's just what that's what Twitter is. For love of God. And before anybody wants to say anything, Blue Sky is the same, but with more pedo behavior. I mean, it's just, that's what these things are. Social media is for trolls. But don't pretend to be surprised when somebody, craps on your photo on Twitter. That, like, what did you think was going to happen? You didn't think. That's the problem. Anyway, that kicked off what feels like years of just garbage interaction back and forth. But one of the things that it also kicked off was a lot of tourists. And what I mean by that was I'm pinpointing that moment, the stupid milkshake photo. And by the way, I think all the kindling was there. People were just waiting to light the match. But it kicked off this moment where a bunch of tourists entered comics. Now, what do I mean by tourists? I mean people who do not read comics, don't love comics, don't care about comics, but see a captive audience of, fans, readers, people who actually do love this, comics and the stories there, and thought, here is a good opportunity to bully the shit out of them. Because that has been happening with increased frequency from all directions. We've seen people who clearly do not read comics say things like, every X-Men. There was this argument on Twitter a couple weeks ago where somebody posted that the X-Men was great because it was a straight white men, no diversity, no handicap comic. And now it's full of gays was the basic post. And, that was a dumb thing to say. One, the X-Men had a woman from the very beginning. Two, the leader of the X-Men's in a wheelchair from the very beginning. The X-Men, certainly, I agree, the original team, all white for quite a while. But, since Claremont came onto the scene, and we're talking the 70s, Storm has been a pretty big deal in that comic. We've had Jewish characters, we've had gay characters, we've had Russian characters, we've had blue furry demon-looking characters, we've had all kinds of things in the X-Men. Okay? At the same time, in this argument, other tourists came in and said, the X-Men, everyone in the X-Men is gay. Cyclops is gay. Wolverine is gay. Everyone is gay. Well, okay, that's not true either. Yes, I recognize that in the first issue of X-Men, following the Rise of X, Powers of 10, Krakoa era, Jonathan Hickman drew a little map of the Summers residence on the moon, and it showed that Jean Grey had a room with seemingly a door that led to both Wolverine and Cyclops' rooms. Spoilers. I have talked to the man himself. That was a joke. It was a joke. From the guy who created it, from the originator. That was a way to kind of screw with comic fans and acknowledge the weird kind of, dynamic between Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean that has played out since the 70s. It was not meant to say, hey, these guys are canonically bisexual and they're in a throuple now. That was never the intent. The intent was to poke at fans. Says Jonathan Hickman himself. Directly. Ask about an interview. Go ahead, AIPT. Go ahead. Anyway, but to say that all the characters are gay, no, of course not. That's stupid. To say that the characters are all straight and white and have no diversity or you know people who are handicapped, no, that's also stupid. Both things are stupid. Both things are said by tourists. And if there's one thing about that stupid milkshake photo, and I'm not saying that was patient zero for everything under the sun, but I think that was a big moment. We got we allowed too many tourists into this hobby that we love. And the tourists have screwed with us on all fronts. There's been people on the right, there's been people on the left, there's been people who are both on the right and the left, because if we're really being honest about it, there have been a decent amount of people in comics, tourists, who have fought on one side and then magically migrated to the other. And if we're really going to look each other in the mirror and, face facts, yeah, there's several of you that made your YouTube fame talking about woke comics and how shitty they are and, all the rest. And then magically over time, when the money started to dry up, you pivoted and started talking about the other way. You basic. No, I'm joking. But those people are all tourists. Those people do not read comics. And I think if there's one thing, if we could go forward over the next 5 years and cure ourselves of one thing, we shouldn't cure ourselves of left-wing comics or right-wing comics or ideologies or anything else. We need to cure ourselves of the tourists. We need to cure ourselves of the people who do not actually read comics, who are just here to kind of bitch, complain, troll, and screw around, because those people have no moral compass at all. Those people are not aligned to anything, and they will flip-flop on a dime. It's probably one of the reasons why I do get irritated when people say, oh, Perch is a fence sitter. He goes either way. Nope. From the beginning of this channel, I've been pretty damn consistent of what I like, what I don't like, and everything else. You may not like my logic because it often cuts both ways, but it is consistent. What bothers me are all the people who one day are, company corporate men happily churning shit out, swallowing everything Marvel and DC, gives to them. And the next day they're rebels. They're against all this. And the next day they're like, no, actually, tiers are good. We should have, you lesser plebes. You should be over here. Those people are tourists. They don't actually read comics. They don't actually appreciate everything comics is given to us. We need to get rid of the tourists. Those are the problem. There's plenty of other things. Send those people back to sports, to video games, to movies, to anything else. But comics, if it is to survive and thrive, it needs to get rid of the people who are not actually in it to read, enjoy comics. We need to rid ourselves of those people. We need to encourage the people who, whether we agree with what they like or don't, those are the people who are going to help comics be strong. The people who are out here to just like pick apart a panel. I mean, look, I used to, when I would be on Twitter, I would roll out a comic panel from the 80s. Like, oh, look at this, woke X-Men. And sure enough, I'd get people that are like, oh, this is trash. This is why I don't read comics anymore. I wish comics go back to the way they were. Like, bitch, this is from 40 years ago. This is the way they were. You're just too stupid to recognize it. Anyway, you ever been in an argument on Twitter around why woke Marvel is, deciding to write Colossus as a communist now? Have you ever been in that thread? It will break your soul. I mean, man, it's a shame that Marvel is writing Colossus as a Russian. Somebody should go tell Claremont to come back and fix that problem. Yeah, that sounds great. Anyway, get rid of the tourists. Do that. That's probably the one thing you could do for the fandom. Get rid of the tourists. Thanks for listening.